Welcome, everyone. How's the volume? Loud in a good way? Okay, good. So, welcome to a Saturday with Clear Mountain. It's good to see everyone. Most of you have been in Blodell, this space before, but for those of you who haven't, Longpo Sumedho, the most senior Western monk in our tradition, was an altar boy in this church when he was 11 years old, so full circles. We don't have many announcements today, beyond one perhaps which Gary could say over there, and the phone, which is nice too.
Now?
We have this space through the generosity of this cathedral. And so we're grateful for that. And we have a Dhamma box on the table in the back for anybody who'd like to express our gratitude financially, because that helps to keep this place running and helps to keep us warm and comfortable on Saturdays.
Thank you, Gary. And we actually have a very special, not announcement, but celebration. Is Virginia and the Canmore crew on Zoom, and can we spotlight them if they are? Maybe they haven't joined yet.
No. We're here.
Oh, you're there. They're there. Good. Okay.
No.
So, who here has met Aya Ahimsa before? Who here has met Virginia before? Okay, some good hands. So for those who don't know, and feel free to spotlight them, people see me all the time. For those who don't know, Aya Ahimsa is one of our deepest and closest Bhikkhuni sisters. She's up in Canmore Theravada Buddhist community, which was an amazing community set up by Sanghamitra, who basically dedicated the space towards hosting monastics and bhikkhunis specifically. And it's this beautiful, nascent sangha that they're creating. And Virginia, who many of you know, today will be going forth as an anagarika, or taking on the anagarika ordination. And we wanted just to celebrate in our community that moment. So maybe first, sorry, we're just getting you all on gallery view quickly, but maybe we can begin just by Virginia and Aya. A second, we're going to get you spotlit, if possible. Sorry, Chia. Oh, maybe they have to talk. Start talking.
You're talking.
Yeah, good. Yeah, maybe we could just begin by Virginia and Aya just sharing what the anagarika ordination means and how you all are right now.
Okay, well, I will start, and I just want to
Thank you, Bodhival.
say, so glad to be here with you all. I have these very special, very warm monastic mittens that were gifted to me by Ajahn Kovilo and Ajahn Nisubo to help me survive the cold Canadian winters up here. And it also turns out that the summers are also cold. So mittens. And yeah, I just want to say it's so nice to be having this special connection on my big day with you all. Really, really nice for me. The Ajahns here were big supporters, big encouragers for this step for me. And I actually met Aya Ahimsa at the Saturday gathering, like almost exactly 2 years ago. The Clear Mountain Gathering. So yeah, you're all very much a part of this. And I'll say for me, it feels like a very strong gathering of intentions to commit more fully to the Dhamma. And it feels like also a gathering of very supportive conditions for practice. And I think that I would say that's what it means to me.
Ahimsa, would you like to say anything about what the step is or what it means?
I think it's honestly just a representation of the next generation. I think that the Bhikkhuni Sangha is becoming more and more harmonious and stable and I would say healthy. And so there are more women that are at least under 50 that are looking at it as a possibility. And yeah, Virginia is such a good, good candidate for monastic life. She's done lots of psychological work and relational work, and she's been a practitioner for over 20 years, and her meditation is going deeper, and all the reasons that she's wanting to take this step are the right reasons. They're very, very good reasons. And a lot of incredible things are coming together for it to happen. And it's, I would say, as much a blessing for the Canada community and myself personally as it is for Virginia. And I just also always want to say, and I'll try not to cry, I never succeed at that one. How grateful we are for the Clear Mountain community. Thank you so much for your friendship and your support and your example. That goes for the whole community.
Maybe I could just say, yeah, Virginia, she's got just a clarity of purpose, which I think is, has cut through a lot of the veil of the world, and means that she's headed towards this renunciant aspiration. We don't know, you never know where it'll go, but it's such a beautiful motion towards that nonetheless, and really may end with her as a bhikkhuni in robes. And the world is so in need of monastics, especially female monastics. We also discovered that mittens are terrible for most things, but they're great for making anjali, so that works well. And just to speak to the community there, first the anagarika step means going forth into homelessness, basically. So it's a really powerful step in this direction. And there's something in the heart, I think, that leaps up when it sees someone taking that step, which is such a gift to the world. And to just broaden that picture briefly and speak to Can more, as many of you know, the Theravada Bhikkhuni lineage was gone for many thousands of years, and just now in the Northwest it's starting again. And honestly, one of the most luminous kernels of that beginning seeds, I think, is in Canmore. Ahimsa's guidance, wisdom, humor, lightness, joy is such a pillar, actually, in this landscape. And then to see the community growing with Virginia is wonderful. And then the connection between the two communities, you'll notice in the background there, we have Angela, Susan, and Brianna, all of who, well, they almost live here. They're here a lot, one way or the other, at least in Angela's case. The other two live here. So maybe before saying any more, Ajahn, I think you've zoomed in, and just want to pass it to you if you wanted to say anything deeply inspiring and moving in the next 30 seconds.
Nice. I won't even go 30 seconds, but just very, very happy to have another person going in the direction of full ordination. It's great to have siblings in robes, siblings that are really dedicating their life more and more to the Dhamma. And honestly, especially for us monastics, I love having new monk brothers or new Samanera, novice, Anagarika brothers. But honestly, it really is good. And this is only something I've personally realized in the last 5 years or 4 or 5 years that, we've had more contact with our Bhikkhuni sisters. It is really good for us as well to have, female renunciate monastic sisters, monastic siblings. So, Anumodana, really rejoicing, a lot of mudita for you going forward. So, sadhu, hope we'll be in connection and Dhamma siblings for a long, long time, probably over 30, but seconds.
And for those of you who don't know how hard it is to find monastic colored clothing on Amazon, Ajahn Kovilo is the brilliant, he can do this with mittens and everything. So he's the mastermind behind our monastic gifts. Before we do a big sadhu together, we do have a secret agent up there in Canmore with a gift for Virginia.
Oh my God.
I think you may have to say something for us to see you, though.
We'll just keep making noise. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Oh. Okay. Oh.
Yeah. Welcome to the renunciant life.
Let's give 3 big sadhus while Virginia blows that out.
Sadhu, sadhu.
And then we had a deal that everyone there has to hug Virginia at the same time.
Okay, I'm getting up to this. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, you're not on camera.
All right, 3 more sadhus. Canmore, any final things before we let you all get back to the ceremony today?
This is a great beginning. Thank you so much. Thank you for initiating it and thinking of it. And may you have a wonderful, wonderful moon day. Time.
Virginia, good luck with your holy life, and it's wonderful to have another sister. We hope the ceremony goes great. We get to visit you soon, and you get many more cupcakes over the years in this renunciant life. So, bye, everyone. See you. Bye. Bye, Aya.
Bye, Ajahn. Bye, Ajahn Kolo. Bye, everyone.
See you, Susan. See you, Angela, Brianna. Very special to have that connection right now. So, with Virginia taking the 8 precepts, you'll all feel guilty if you don't take the 5. So, at least the 5. So we're going to, at the first Saturday of every month, we usually give the 5 precepts. I forgot last Saturday, so we're doing it today. If people want to turn to page 126, Trenton will lead in requesting these. And if you're online, you can find the link to the Amravati chanting book in the chat. And for those who don't know, these just are, the refuges are a way of orienting our lives towards the goal of awakening, the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and the teachings which have been given to us. These are completely optional, no pressure to take them. And the 5 precepts are, the Buddha characterized them as mahadana, a great gift, in that when you take these precepts to not steal, to not lie, and so on, you're giving the gift of fearlessness to everyone around you. So these can be conceived as training rules and a gift.
Okay, anybody who would like to participate, if you'd like, you can begin by bowing 3 times. Mayang bante tisarangena saha pancha silani yachama tutiyang pi mayang bante tisaranena saha pancha silani yachama tatiyang pi mayang bante tisarangena saha pancha silani yachama.
So we'll take the refuges in Pali for those who want, and you can just repeat after me, and then we'll do the precepts in Pali and English. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa 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 bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Dhammang saranam gacchami.
Dhammang saranam gacchami.
Sanghang saranam gacchami.
Sanghang saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami.
Tissarana nittithang, and you say ama bante.
Ama bante.
Pangatipata veramani sikaparang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Adinadana veramani sikaparang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
Kame sumichachara veramani sikaparang samadhiyami.
Kame sumichachara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
Musawada veramani sikaparang samadhiyami.
Musawada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
Surameraya majjhapamadhatana veramani sikaparang samadhiyami.
Sura meraya majjhapamadhatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
And then just I say this. Imani pancha sikaparani silena sugating yanti silena boga sampara silena nibuting yanti tasamasi lang visodaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore, let virtue be purified. And you say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
I've always found it ironic that people making their way through the Pali of the 5th actually sound vaguely intoxicated while they try to do it. So, Longpo Tongrat, one of the teachers of Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Mun's instruction to him was to keep the 5 precepts absolutely perfectly in body, speech, and mind. And they say that took him much of the way to awakening. And it's just worth reflecting on how refined you can ripple out this ethic. With not killing, can it be more than just haphazardly and roughly brushing, getting the spider and throwing it outside? Can you incline the mind towards harmlessness, like gently pick it up, gently put it down, little things like that, with not lying. Where are you being slightly dishonest with yourself? When do you exaggerate in conversation? With not stealing, where are the places where you're taking a little more than you know you should? Which Netflix password of your friend are you still using and know you probably shouldn't be using? Little things like this, and just considering, what intoxicates us. What can you give up on that? Maybe it's YouTube or TikTok or some other route towards intoxication. But how clear-minded can we become? So these precepts are not a small thing. They're a beautiful training, and I don't really see a far horizon for how far one could take them if you really honor them. So we'll meditate together for about 20 minutes. And for those who haven't been here before, the men's restroom's over there and the women's restroom is over there. So as usual, begin by setting the body upright, sitting with dignity. Draw in the lower spine so it allows the rest of the vertebrae to balance upright. Notice any tension in the forehead and soften it. The eyes soften. The jaw soften. Smile gently on the inside of your mouth. Notice any tension in the belly and soften. Just allow breathing to deepen, slow, and center. Now, if you want, you can divide the body into 3 chambers. One is from slightly below the belly button up to a point between the nose and the heart. The next, which overlaps with the first, is the central chamber, smaller, between the nose, from the nose to the heart. And the third, the upper chamber, which overlaps with the center, is from that spot between the nose and the heart up to about 6 inches above the head. 3 rough ovals, all touching that central point between the nose and the heart. And begin just by relaxing into that lower chamber, put awareness there. Relax any points of tension you feel. And then imagine awareness moving with the breath in a circuit down the front of the body, the front of that chamber, circling back up along the spine, touching that midpoint between the nose and heart, and then just repeating on the exhale, allowing that breath to just, and awareness to circle down the front, and the exhale allowing it to come up the back. You're not forcing it, but rather just inviting awareness to circle like that. Keeping a rough count of about 10 breaths, just gently in the background. After 10 breaths, you might find the breath, the awareness has already begun to kind of coalesce into that central chamber, and you can allow it to. For 10 breaths, circulating awareness around that central chamber, down the front of that small bubble between the nose and heart, and up the back of that small bubble. Allowing awareness to consolidate at that central point, but keeping a touch of movement in that gentle circulation the whole time. For about 10 breaths. Then allow awareness to expand up into circulating around that upper chamber, roughly from that center point up the back to about 6 inches above the head and down the front. For about the count of 10 breaths. And as long as you're inclined, you can just repeat that, circulating for around 10 breaths in the lower chamber, the middle, and the upper. Touching this grounding flavor in the lower chamber, consolidating in that center chamber, touching a heavenly, light, sweet energy in the top chamber. And don't force it. If you just release awareness into one of those chambers, you'll find that it naturally wants to circulate, and then it may, over time, spiral in, where by the count of 6 or 7, it's spiraled much closer to the center. And eventually, that center chamber may just be a small circuit right almost at the tip of the nose or the heart, depending on where you feel it. And just trust the mind to consolidate. Your job is just to release it into the right chamber. Keep a rough count of 10 and trust it to find its way. I'll see you all in a few minutes. in the last few minutes of meditation. If you want, you can just bring to mind those faces from the Zoom screen up in Canmore. Just the beauty of what's happening there right now. That real sense of mudita, sympathetic joy, rejoicing. Allow the heart to leap up at that and savor it. And whatever sweetness or brightness came up with that recollection, you can just imagine condensing it down into a small pearl, which you tuck into your heart, into your chest, to touch when you need to throughout the day.
Okay, let us request the Dhamma talk. If you like to, you do it with me. We bow it 3 times first. Ready? Bow. Roma Jaloka Thipati Sahampati Kat Anjaliyanan Tiwarangaya Jatha Santi Tasatta Parachaka Chatika Te Se Tu Dhammang Anukam Pimang Pachang.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Saṅghāṃ Namasami. So for those who are new, we do have a lot of ritual in this tradition, and just to say to hold them like a dance, which you do with one another. They're these embodied acts which frame these exchanges and these moments and give them an additional weight. They're not powerful in and of themselves, but they take on a lot of power when they're done with others and held with care. And just briefly, we will, I think, lean into a Q&A today. I really enjoy questions and answers. But the guided meditation, who found that somewhat clear, those three chambers, able to kind of tap into them a bit? Okay. So I find it a very useful division of the body in the sense that in the Anapanasati Sutta, the Buddha says to become sensitive to the whole body. And this process touches three of the main, and he calls the breath a body within the body, and kind of this idea of this subtle body of the energy which subtly moves around the body. And I find there's three large or general flavors of that energy, which are spoken about in Taoist meditation, and they actually roughly align with the first three foundations of mindfulness. So in the lower half, from about the heart down, is what's called Jing, which is, it's somewhat associated with sexual energy. It's fairly earthy and nourishing. And that sublimates to Qi, which is around the heart space. And many of you will know the word Qi from Qigong and such. It's a bit more subtle. And then that sublimates into Shen, which is mind, and that's in this upper chamber. It's much more refined and light. And those roughly map onto mindfulness of the body, Jing, mindfulness of feelings, Qi, the second Satipatthana, foundation of mindfulness, and mindfulness of mind, Shen. And what you really might find is that at the beginning, most of us come into meditation from a place of Jing. We're quite coarse. And so you might find, although it's good to open up those three chambers, move lower, middle, upper, you might actually find for the first while in meditation, you actually spend a lot of time in that lower chamber. It feels quite nourishing. It's like you're a sponge soaking up this earthy energy. And you can even imagine roots going into the ground. But then after a time, and they talk about the Dantian, this kind of hara area, this sort of energy point, as kind of this furnace which heats up the Jing and like steam into the Qi. And so after a while of time there, you really might find that actually the mind starts to coalesce a lot more into that central place. And then there might come a time where the mind is very refined, and actually it really doesn't want to go below the heart. It really wants to stay quite high up here. But then over time, what you want is to aim, although it'll kind of move back and forth, as the meditation goes on, what you might find is that it kind of spirals closer and closer to the heart, where by the end, actually, your lower chamber might just be from about below the diaphragm up to kind of this tip of the nose, heart space, and then the middle chamber might be quite refined. It might almost be a pinpoint right by the tip of the nose or between the heart and the tip of the nose. But what I find is if you don't keep a subtle circulation there, it can clench up. That subtle movement, it's like an electrical current creates a still magnetic field. But there's a subtle, smooth movement, like still flowing water, in the words of Ajahn Chah, that can manifest if you just keep a slight movement. And then that upper chamber is just this lightness. And those three chambers really allow you to balance the energies again and again and come back to that centered place. And you might really find it lets you develop the skill in pleasure, and meditation should be a pleasurable path. So, hopefully over time, you begin to notice this really earthy, nourishing energy in the Jing, and this sort of heavenly, sweet energy in the Shen up here, to use that terminology. And if you are having trouble touching into any of that, consider taking a cold shower. I really recommend cold showers that clean out the chi quite a lot, or the kind of energy of the breath. So yeah, a lot of this can sound, we're using, Theravada doesn't have the right language for these energies. The Buddha was giving us kind of these broad frameworks, but I find you can tap into these other traditions for a much more clear picture of what it means to become sensitive to the body. So just wanted to give some encouragement there. And if sort of this body approach doesn't resonate at all, just knowing that loving kindness is a really safe, powerful practice that is worth exploring, and just cultivating that warmth in the heart. So what's on people's minds? We do have a chance for questions today. And if you just raise your hand, we can have a spry mic runner who might be my mom, or it is my mom. Good. Hello, Mom. So she is spry. And she can bring the mic over to you. And if you're on Zoom, you can raise your cartoon hand, and our AV can call on you. Please.
Thank you, John, for the wonderful meditation and lecture. You brought up 3 foundations of mindfulness, and I had just been reading about the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Is there a difference between those in Theravada versus Mahayana, or are they similar?
Thank you. So the Buddha called the establishings of mindfulness the domain. It's a safe domain, and he said if you wander outside of that domain, you wander into Mara's clutches. So there's something very powerful about this practice of coming back to just looking at the body and the body. Feelings is feelings. This is painful. This is pleasurable, and just that much, and not proliferating. And then the state of the mind, contracted, angry, distressed. And it is fun to overlay it onto this. And the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutta is an explicit ladder of how to use those 3 foundations to cultivate pleasure, calm, and then insight. I think there is a difference between the first 3 and the last one. The last foundation is mindfulness of dhammas, or dhamma categories. So it's one becomes aware, one remains mindful of the 5 hindrances of sloth and torpor, restlessness, sensual desire, anger, etc. Of the enlightenment factors, these bright qualities of mind, rapture, equanimity, etc. And then in the traditional sutta, it goes on into a lot of other lists which are useful, but if you use comparative studies, you see that probably what the Buddha included in that 4th foundation was actually just the 5 hindrances, these blocks to meditative calm, like sensual desire, sloth and torpor, restlessness, and the enlightenment factors, these like indicators of the bright, luminous mind. And that really simplifies it, because it's saying with the other foundations, you're really looking at your experience just as this much, A feeling is just pleasurable, just painful, and if you just know it as such, it lets you take a step back and not react to it. And Ajahn Sucitta says mindfulness is hovering 1 inch above the ground, and that 1 inch is everything, though. It gives you that slight distance. But the 4th foundation is connecting our experience, those other foundations, to the Dharmic teachings. So maybe you have a pleasant feeling, but perhaps it's pleasure predicated on, loving of cinnamon roll or something. And granted, that's worldly pleasurable feeling, which is in the 2nd foundation, but also noticing, that's, if you bring that 4th foundation, you can say, this is sensual desire. Whereas maybe you have a sense of pleasure from metta practice, and really saying, that's actually, I see that imbued with these enlightenment factors. So it's kind of more overlaying value judgments, like those do exist in the other satipatthanas, but it is more of a somewhat cognitive overlay, where you're really connecting your experience to the teachings and seeing what to cultivate and what to abandon. Whereas the first 3 are very immediate ways of being with your experience, if that makes sense. Does that sort of hit the spot at all, or speak to that?
Yeah, it does. And I was actually, the way I was putting it together was that the third and fourth had to do with mind, and the first is body, the second is feeling, and the third and fourth were more mind.
Yes. Yeah, the fourth, I mean, yeah, and the third explicitly is mind states, but you're right, the fourth has a lot to do with that. But the fourth really can overlay onto the other three as well. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn. I had a question about mindfulness in the moment of falling asleep. That's a really interesting time to have mindfulness of mind as all the filters start falling off. But it also, I find that being mindful of the breath or the body in that time of falling asleep helps calm like some anxieties, calm the body so it is more able to fall asleep. But then there's also a moment where it switches, where mindfulness keeps me awake. And there's a release that has to happen, like a trust that the mind will calm down. I'll see a lot of really interesting stuff, but try not to let that wake me back up. So how do you navigate that falling asleep, mindful letting go, but also like when I talk to other people, I describe it as like when the frontal cortex comes, the filter of that comes off, the mind just puts all kinds of really interesting things together, like banana and cats. Oh, this is genius. Why didn't I think of this before? And then like the thinking mind comes back on and is like, no. But so there's like this dance of, there's a lot happening in falling asleep. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, there's a funny story of Ajahn Chah. There's a new novice at Wapapong, and Ajahn Chah said, okay, what breath did you fall asleep on? And so for the next few weeks, the novice was like trying to get it right every time and preparing. And then it was a few weeks later and he was ready for the question, and Ajahn Chah turned to him and said, all right, what breath did you wake up on? And then, yeah, I think a few things. That balance between control and letting go is a very interesting one, and it's one that I think is very problematic for most moderns. And it's why in the meditation, I said, you know, at some point, the Buddha said you should interact with wholesome mind states, like, he said you should interact with unwholesome mind states, like a cow herd would herd a cow before the rice had been harvested. So he's constantly tapping the cow so it doesn't get into the weeds. And he should interact with the mind states that are wholesome, like a cow herd after the rice has all been harvested. And he sits under a tree and says, and this is a quote from the Sutta, there are those cows, you know, and I love that. And so it's interesting, like at the beginning, meditation can be quite directed, you know, like here's how you circulate the breath in this chamber, in this chamber, in this chamber. But after time, that becomes very heavy-handed. You're like constantly hitting the cows, and the cows are like, they're fine. They know what to do. And that's why I think at some point it's really good to learn to like change your interaction with the meditation to much more releasing into that pasture or that chamber, and then just trust the cows. Like they know to run in a circle or do whatever they're going to do. And that's a really important transition, and it requires a significant shift in. There's a real key moment in a meditation, I find, where you have to make that conscious decision of like, oh, there's too much vitakka vichara, directed thought. I need to just listen to the ringing of the bell. And maybe you direct the mind every 60 seconds, but then you step back and just listen. And with falling asleep, I find it can be the same thing. If you're really trying to kind of stay mindful on one point, there does come a point where you need to release. And I think either you can just acknowledge things can get a little weird there and it can be a little awkward, there's not a way around it. But also the Buddha really recommended loving kindness for going to sleep. He said, a benefit of loving kindness, the 11 benefits: one sleeps easily, wakes easily, dreams no evil dreams. One is dear to human and non-human beings. One has a bright complexion. When one dies unconfused. And also, arrows, fire, and poison can't hurt one. So that would be great. A lot of arrows around here. But sleeps easily. And I think that sense of like, loving kindness has a quality where you don't always have to be pinpointing on it. It lets you kind of sink into it. And I think it lets you release the cognitive load in a way that other meditations don't. I think it's also why if people go into the workspace, often if they try to keep mindfulness of the breath the whole time, it's too fragile. You can't, do spreadsheets and be mindful of your breath the whole time. It's like you're trying to point the flashlight of awareness at the breath and then at the spreadsheet, and then the breath and the spreadsheet. The amazing thing about the Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, it actually just changes the flashlight. Like if I'm with someone's in a conversation, I don't know how this relates to spreadsheets. Allison is the accountant. But with like a conversation, instead of being like, I have to be with my breath and with this conversation, you can be like, I'm going to try to be here in the most loving way I can to my coworker right now. Like, what gift can I give in this conversation? And you're 100% there, but you've changed the whole quality of the light you're shining. And what can happen is if you really are in a very intense environment of the world, which is just intense, and you go into it with that intention of a bodhisattva, like I want to be here as a gift to the world, what you might find is you go down to sit meditation at the end of the day, and there's no residue. It's like you can completely sink in. So the Brahma Viharas are very special meditations. And I think they're what you should go to sleep on. And the cognitive load can fall away, but you just come to rest in this metta. And when you wake up, you can also watch that similar moment of scrambling for a self to coalesce around. And that's when, and I've said this before, you need to be really guarded and like immediately go to loving kindness, establish in the heart for the first 15 minutes of your day, because that will pay dividends through the rest of the day. And as you age and lose your memory, people wonder what happens, but if you've cultivated the Brahma Viharas, it's like maybe the mind becomes foggy, but it's like sunrise into a cloud bank. It just illuminates the fog into brightness. And there's a monk named Mahagosananda who Aya Sentusiga gave a talk about last week. And Longpo Pasano met him when his memory had completely gone. He couldn't have a conversation or anything. But he said he was an avatar of pure metta. He couldn't converse or anything, but all that was left when everything else was gone was just the Brahma Viharas, that loving kindness quality. So, yeah, if I could recommend 10 minutes of any meditation a day, like loving kindness will change a life with 10 minutes a day. But for the rest of us who meditate more, it's still what you should go to bed on and wake up on. Even before you move after waking up, just bring awareness to the heart and get a glow going there. So, help.
Thank you.
We have Ed on Zoom.
Ed, go for it.
Thank you, Ajahn. Just thinking about the 5 hindrances, could you speak for a moment about mental formations? And if you're really feeling ambitious, maybe consciousness.
I babysat Ed's kids as a young lad. So, Ed, do you mean the 5 aggregates, khandhas?
Yes.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's a big question. So who here knows the 5 aggregates of clinging? So these are the focal points of identity. What's the first? Body. Second? Feeling, Vedana. Third? Perception. Fourth? Sankhara, mental formations, stuff. It's hugely hard to translate. And fifth is consciousness, vijnana. Okay, good. Way to go, team. So the Buddha taught a radical phenomenology where these 5 aggregates are all processes. And in the Buddha's time, khandha could be used as an aggregate of flame. So it's a process feeding off of fuel, and it's how we create the sense of a self, coalescing around one of these. So maybe, you feel quite wounded, and you're the victim, and that has a lot of that feeling quality and other things as well. And the first three are pretty easy. You know, we attach to the body. This is me and mine. It's a beautiful body. It's an ugly body. It's not good enough. It's gorgeous, whatever. Feeling, this is so painful, and just completely grabbing onto that and saying, like, I will get away from this pain however I can. That's kind of positing a self in terms of investing the heart and feeling, Vedana. Perception, just I'm the extrovert, I'm a victim, I'm better than, less than. Perception. But sankhara, the fourth, mental formation, is the hardest to translate. So well done, Ed. And what it is, it means basically it's the concoctor, the concoction, and the act of concocting all in one. And there's a sutta called the Gajaniya Sutta where the Buddha speaks to all these things as process. He says, form, why is it called form? Because it's deformed. Deformed by what? Deformed by heat, by cold, by burning and creeping things. Feeling, why is it called feeling? Because it feels. What does it feel? Pleasure, pain, neutral. Perception, why is it called perception? Because it perceives. Mental formations, why are they called mental formations? Because they form. What do they form? They form body for the sake of body. They form feeling for the sake of feelings, etc. So what that means is, what mental formations does is it takes all the other aggregates and concocts them into a program that it runs. It constellates them into an experience with real power and momentum. So maybe you see your loved one didn't do the dishes. So there's the feeling of anger, Vedana, unpleasant. There's a tightness in the chest, that's the body. There's the perception of like, great, guess I'm the martyr again who has to do the dishes. That's perception. And all those things, sankhara, it's a program and it's ready to run. And that's what sankhara takes all those and it snowballs them into a really, that snowball of not doing the dishes can run over a whole evening. And so how you interact with sankhara, it takes all the others and it runs it. So the way to work with sankhara is the Buddha compared it to a banana tree. And banana trees, they have no heartwood. They're just wrapped leaves, like an onion almost. And what you do with sankhara is just untangle it. Say, oh, okay, we have perception, my loved one is lazy, I'm a victim, whatever. We have the feeling, unpleasant feeling. I have this tightness in the chest. And you're unraveling the constellation of sankhara until the whole plantain tree, the whole banana tree, the onion, is just laid out. And hopefully you aren't crying, because that is what happened with onions. Yeah, you just get rid of its momentum. So that's sankhara, and it can create a lot of karma. If you buy into it, it has such power, it's momentum. So that's sankhara, and it's the impulse as well behind that. And then consciousness, that's the fifth aggregate. The Buddha said the first four aggregates, form, feeling, perception, sankhara, are the building blocks of experience. The fifth, consciousness, takes those building blocks and tastes it. It's the subject. And the Buddha said those first four, and which are called namarupa and consciousness, lean up against each other, mutually dependent, like two bundles of reeds. So consciousness is what feels again and again, oh, pain, etc., and gets colored by it. And so with vijnana, consciousness, just stepping back into that awareness again and again, because it's a safer harbor. It's not totally safe until you're completely awakened, but instead of buying into these other things, if you do step back into mindfulness, you're to some extent stepping back into consciousness. And then, yeah, I'm not going to go any farther into that. So that's the aggregates. Did that help, Ed? Clear as mud?
Don't buy the storyline.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good, that's simpler. Do that, exactly. Condense everything I said into that. Okay. Oh, please.
I think you started to answer this question over here, but I'd like a little more, which is about the development of patience. Not just patience in one's life, but patience in one's path. Yeah.
So the word for patience in Buddhism is khanti, and the Ajahn Sumedho lovingly translates it as a peaceful coexistence with the unwished for. And you can't wait for something to end and have patience at the same time. So it's not just gritting your teeth, although it can be that. You know, there are times. And the agent form of the word khanti is kantar, and that's how that was a word for an elephant in the Buddhist time. I really like that. Like, does an elephant stand, you know? And I think there's a few ways of touching that word that are skillful. First, the Buddha labeled it as the supreme incinerator of defilement, the supreme quality, which is so helpful because instead of all these like very refined qualities of heart, some of which we just don't have access to, like I don't always have loving kindness for everyone around me, but patience is always accessible, and it's such a grounded, powerful object. And there's just some motions of our life, some things that happen where, you know, sometimes you really can look from a bird's eye view and say, okay, I get it, this is part of my practice, I see why I'm having to move through this. But other times you're just in the middle of the storm, just trying to keep your head together. And for times like that, that quality of patience is so helpful. So I'd say patience should be associated with listening. And this is why that elephant quality, they have big ears. But the Four Noble Truths, how you listen to which noble truth you're touching and orient is a key quality in patience. Because if you orient towards the noble truth that's in your life right at that time correctly, there's not that sense of disjunct. Like it's the first noble truth of understanding suffering. You know, one problem is when people come out of retreat or something like a meditation retreat, they've just been in the third noble truth of peace. And they just want to ride that plane all the way to Nibbana. And you don't get to do that. You have all four noble truths, they're all right there. And the problem is that when the suffering hits, they're not agile enough to realize, oh, like actually I'm no longer in the third noble truth now. This isn't peace, this is suffering. And the duty is different. The duty with suffering is to understand it and place caring hands on your suffering and to stand under your suffering. That's how Longpo Sumedho says, to understand suffering, you have to stand under it. And just feel like, oh, this is what it feels like to hurt. This is the human experience of difficulty. I see how it's based on craving, the second noble truth, and letting go of that is how it releases. But also just understanding that often if you really touch that difficulty of life, it wears away your hard edges. Like suffering is, understanding suffering and being with it is the route towards humility. And humility is a love of reality. And with suffering, there's nothing wrong with the world. It's our orientation and wanting it to be otherwise that always is the disjunct. And the deeper, so I'd say that with khanti, you know, you can be with great suffering, but it really helps if you know that your duty at that time is to understand it. And there's some periods of your life where like your whole duty is just to keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep your head down, and that's okay. There's times like that. So I'd say, yeah, finding the right, being willing to move back to the first noble truth really helps with khanti. And then just to acknowledge that there's one aspect of the path is you're giving up what you've known for what you don't know. And the taste of the world and the things we've known are coarse, and they take a while to clear from the tongue. And there's this dark space between when you give something up, that dark valley, and the light that comes on the other side. And that's a really hard place to hold still through. And that's where patience is key, because there's a delayed gratification. My parents would make me say that when I was a little kid. They say, can you say delayed gratification? Delayed gratification. And there's this beautiful T.S. Eliot poem from the Four Quartets line where he says, "Wait without hope, because hope would be hope for the wrong thing. Wait without love, because love would be love of the wrong thing. There's still faith, but the faith and the hope and the love are all in the waiting. The faith and the hope and the love are all in the waiting." And there's just some periods where you just have to hold still enough, keep your sila, keep practicing, have faith that things will change, and the light does begin to circulate in, but sometimes you have to wait through that dark subway tunnel, for a time. Did that help at all? Okay.
We have Mary Webster on Zoom.
Mary, please.
Hi, Ajahn. Hello, everybody. My question is very vague. It's very loose, but both you and Ajahn Kovalo have been using awareness lately, awareness of the body. So the question is generally like to help understand awareness a little bit more, because awareness seems to be outside. The body can exist in awareness. The awareness can be inside. It's aware of this internal stuff. So it seems to be this glue that holds together these things that you were just talking about. Am I in a Brahma Vihara? Am I in a hell realm? Where, there's an awareness that is a knower of all of this that is tossed around rather loosely. So anything that you can say on that, Ajahn? Thank you.
Great question. So a few things. One is the Buddha taught not just sati, mindfulness, which is bringing something into kind of establishing recollectedness and keeping it in mind. But there's a story of a monk who was so mindful of his footsteps that he just walked straight past the street into a yard. And that's where awareness, sampajanya, which is clear comprehension, is another word for it, is important. And that's the broader context of what you're doing. Like, oh, there's a turn here. I've heard it said like mindfulness is sweeping with the front end of the broom, and sampajanya, awareness, is knowing that the back end of your broom, if it's a long tie broom, is not going to hit someone. So it's this sort of broader stepping back that's a bit more broad context. So that's one way of using it. But I think also, we're using it in the sense, yes, of just holding different things in experience, and this quality of stepping back into sati sampajanya, mindfulness, is stepping back into the knowing to some extent. And there is a sense of stability there, like awareness isn't as changed as the objects of awareness. And you all might remember Aya Suchita saying that sutta she loved, one excellent night, one does not revive the past nor speculate on what's to come. Here, just here, one plainly sees, attentive to every presently arisen state, this insight is one's strength. And when doubt comes up or jealousy, instead of trying to solve the problem, being like, okay, gosh, I'm really, I'm not as good as this person or something, just stepping back into mindfulness of feeling, like, oh, painful, jealousy, ow, that's stepping back into awareness. But the final thing to know is the Buddha, I've heard it compared to like, attention is the thumb, the four fingers are things like perception, nama, basically, perception, intention, etc. And the palm is the chitta of awareness. And what happens often is the palm is touching and kind of the five aspects of cognition grab an object and hold it, press it into the chitta so it tastes it. But when samadhi becomes powerful, the five gather into the palm and are held there in one luminous singularity. And that's when we start talking about awareness as an object in itself, is because it gathers enough momentum and brightness that you can actually begin to step into awareness as its own foundation and object of samadhi. So that's when there's no object held anymore. It's just gathered into one unified mind state. Does that address anything of what you're asking, Mary?
Really, really well, Ajahn. Thank you very much.
Super.
So, especially this last part, that awareness can be the object itself.
Yeah.
And that awareness is different than consciousness of. This is the broader one that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's difficult because the Buddha never gives you a final place to step back into apart from Nibbana. He just says, keep stepping back into the knowing of the knowing of the knowing.
Okay.
So yeah, as soon as you take awareness as an object, you're being aware of the awareness. So there's another level to step back.
Yeah.
And you basically back yourself into a corner and then the wall breaks and then apparently you're awakened. But
may it be so.
Exactly. But it's really useful that if you're using breath meditation, the Buddha often spoke about 4 elements like breath, solidity. That's what usual breath meditation is. But sometimes the Buddha spoke about 2 additional elements, space and consciousness. And what you might find is that if once meditation is refined enough, sticking with those first 4 of just the breath, it feels claustrophobic. And it's because the mind has become quite luminous and expanded. And that's when I find you can just invoke that 6th element of consciousness and let the mind expand out and just rest in bright, luminous awareness. And so, yeah, even in a kind of mundane meditation, you can really use that recollection somewhat, I think.
Thank you so much, Ajahn. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. I think Allison may have had her hand up for a while, actually. Nope, never mind. Back one of these 2 then. That's great. Pajanati, that means to know, but there's a lot of different roots to that word. There's manyati, which means to conceive in terms of self. There's abhijanati, to fully know, which only a Buddha does, all this fun stuff. It's a good point. Patijanati, full around knowing.
You spoke last week, you mentioned that the last thing you can take away from someone is their suffering. And that when you get to a place where you've had a recognition of that, then you need to work on gladdening the mind to supplant. And so can you speak on the practices of gladdening the mind?
Wow, what a good question, Jen. So, just to review, what I was saying is sometimes, and I was using a meditation scenario for this, the mind becomes very calm. And dukkha is an interesting word. It translates as suffering, but it also means stress or perturbation, like a knot, palpitation. So like, you'll notice as the mind becomes calm, there's all these kind of knots that arise, and then a thought will bubble up from the knot. And so all those knots are dukkha, actually. Like, they're very refined dukkha, little stress points. And as you release them, as that kind of circulation, for example, massages them all out, and there's just this clear flowing stream, often it's very disoriented. You end up with, you've had this unconscious mental model of your body and your suffering and your future and past and depressions and worries, and suddenly it's all gone. And it can be quite frightening. You start to flail. And for me, at the end, this is at the end of step 8 of the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutta, where it's like mental activity is calmed. And people's impulse, and what we're talking about with Jen here, is at that point just to kind of stay there and try to just wait until things get calmer. And often it really doesn't work. And in the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutta, it says first you have to gladden the mind, and then you can concentrate the mind. So what I find then is actually if you drop in a word of loving kindness or a perception of light, the mind becomes very luminous, it's very suggestible, and then it's willing to consolidate into calm. So roots to that gladdening. If the mind's calm, I find the word love is very simple. And, love, forgiveness, something like that. I use the word God. Christian language has a very deep impact on me still. I grew up with it. So I use the word God sometimes. That brings to mind a lot of light. That's a whole other discussion for Buddhism. But another root is, if we talked about this last time, but there's a very subtle doorway to loving kindness hidden at the heart chakra, to use that language, like right above the heart in the middle of the chest. We spoke about this last time. But if awareness is very delicate, like it's really pinpointed there, just find that. Like you're moving a finger over the pulse, and find that tenderness and then let it grow. Another one, and this is what Lee Brasington recommends, bring a gentle smile when the mind is calm and is rested on the breath. And there's a sort of subtle sense of brightening with the smile. And if you make that the focus of awareness, you transition to that being your object, it's like holding a mic up to a speaker. The rapture, it might be quite little at first, but if you put awareness on it, it will brighten the awareness, and the awareness becomes more powerful on that. And that little spark of the brightened smile area can pretty much launch you into a lot of brightness, actually. There's also hidden pleasure points in the body. The palms often are one, actually. If you put awareness in the palm, you might notice a subtle pleasure, the hands. And interesting, the outside of the hips. Yeah, like give it a try. There's actually a subtle, like for some reason, there's a subtle pleasure hidden there for many people, for me. Also the pineal gland in the center of the mind, the brain. And I do find if you just put awareness there, it can be a bit much, but if you just allow that slight circling in each of these spaces, it allows enough movement to keep things from clenching up, but you can invoke that pleasure there. And then in daily life, which is important, I would say, yeah, these same recollections of loving kindness, they have to be a lot coarser. You're up against a much tougher enemy, you know, or landscape. But yeah, bringing a prayer bead to work and like repeating words of loving kindness, taking 5-minute breaks to just recenter and reconsolidate, and acts of giving, that's the biggest. Chaga, which means to give or to give up, it's one of the first qualities we cultivate, and it's literally a synonym for awakening, the end of the path. Chaga, patinisaga, muti analio, freed. So chaga, from day one to day, at the final day, it's like giving is such a powerful thing. And I think, yeah, when I see that, it's very beautiful. Did that help at all? Okay. Okay, we'll have to wrap stuff up in a second, but let's do one more. Yes.
You were talking about this just a little bit, but you've often listed here and there just little things that we can do and add to our lives as sort of part of a routine, or not necessarily routine, but so I'm looking at a sort of transitional phase in my life where I've got a new job and a new apartment, and I see this as a huge opportunity to create a routine. And I need routine in my life because I have a rather unstructured mind, and so it keeps things in order for me. And I've heard you list all of these wonderful things that I can add to that routine, but as soon as I leave the conversation, they just float off out of my brain and I don't remember them anymore. So I'm wondering if you can give me some ideas, and I'm going to write them down, of things that I can hold in a routine that I'm about to build as I move into this new life routine.
Thank you, Hasa. People often, one caveat with giving that anumotana to Virginia going forth is, people should not compare their path to that. Not everyone's going to be monastic, and there's a powerful and ancient form of how to live as an upasaka, a devoted disciple of the Buddhist path. And so those structures are ancient and really powerful. The things I would suggest is get a really beautiful shrine, which I think you have. Print out pictures of the teachers who really inspire you, Jetsu, and Palmo, others. Every morning when you wake up, bow 3 times to that shrine. I would also suggest taking on 28 full-length prostrations every morning. I do that. Ajahn Kovilo does like 56 because he's extra cool. But I dedicate the merit of my life to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. I dedicate it to my parents, to those who've cared for me, to people I know who need it. And then I am spontaneously pray to just set intention, like, may I give up this anger, may I be patient, may I be kind. And you just, for 28 bows, it takes about 4 minutes, you're just explicitly orienting your life in one direction with those are powerful bodily movements that affect the heart over time. And it's a great workout too. And yeah, we've forgotten in the West that embodied action affects the heart. So doing that, I would say 5 precepts as a basis, 8 precepts which add on not taking entertainment, not using beautification and adornment, no makeup, and no watches, no jewelry, and sleeping on the ground, so like a thermarest, once a week. That's your uposa today, that's your Sabbath. And not eating after noon if you want, if you feel like you can. And yeah, if you have one day a week where you kind of keep those, it's a powerful reorientation of your whole week. It shows you where you've slipped, and it kind of reorients. And to not hold that cold nothing, because some just cut things off, but you can use that day to invite over, that afternoon, maybe you invite someone over to go for a walk, a Kali Nimitta, listen to a Dharma talk, and then you meditate for an hour and a half. Maybe in the morning you also invite people over for brunch or something before noon. Feeding people once a week, I think, is really important. Inviting people over for the meal. Monastery 3 times a year, 3 times. Sravasti Abbey is just 4 or 5 hours away, people, really close. Abhayagiri is wonderful. It's free. Tell the Majjhima sent you, as long as you don't mess anything up. And then 20 minutes of meditation a day at least, but honestly, I find see changes in a life at 20 minutes of meditation a day, 45 minutes of meditation a day, and an hour and a half a day. And I think 2 45-minute blocks, if you can do that with your life, it will change a lot in your life very quickly. That's what I got right now, Hasa.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, let's say the names we have here for now. Monique. Nitnoy's daughter. Karen Clay. Colleen, who passed away on Wednesday. Alex and in a coma. Chitra. Broken ankle. Cynthia. Jean. Seminary Junha, she broke her leg on a hike, hiked out 17 miles on it. She has surgery Tuesday. Kim. German and Naomi. Lynn, who passed. Victor. Andrew, who recently had heart bypass surgery. Alice, unexpected health problems. Marilyn, Mary, and Walter, who all have serious health concerns. A despairing friend. The survivors of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, which happened 80 years ago today and 2 days ago. Milo?
So we have Augustus the cat, recently passed away, spread care and merit for a good rebirth. That's from Lou, Noah, and the Ajahns. For Scott and Nicole, may they feel comfort and ease through Scott's rectal cancer treatments, from Ajahns and Brianna. For Charlotte, that's all it says. For Jitra, broken ankle, from Chinita Allen and friends. For Samaneri Junha, broke leg, please spread care for healing, from Ajahns and community. For Zoe and Nora Adams, may they be happy, healthy, blessed, and protected by all Buddhas, from Jason Brown. For David, death by suicide, please send merit, from Tessa. And also from Tessa for David's cats and dog left behind. May they be well and find good homes. For Zoe and Tate, father passed away suddenly, spread merit for his rebirth, and so their mother may find peace, from Tyler. And for Victor, going through chemotherapy, wish for success and recovery, from Alex, his granduncle.
So we'll just be quiet together for 20 seconds. People can turn to page 37 in the book, and we'll just dedicate this goodness to all those who we mentioned. 37, Buddha's words of loving kindness. It's just a way of changing our relationship to these memories and spreading care. Now let us chant the Buddha's words on loving kindness. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, freed from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection, This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So I know we're a little over time, but we usually just invite anyone who's new and has been here 3 times or less, if you want, to just raise your hand and introduce yourself and just tell us your name and how you heard about us, if you want. People are pointing to someone, but I don't see them. Hello. Jenna, good to meet you. People are, oh, good. Jake, you drove up from Tacoma. Welcome. Thank you for making their trip. Okay. So, thank you, everyone. As many of you know, we don't use money in our tradition. Everything here is freely offered. Please take some books in the back. Get yourself a name tag if you don't have one. Try to write on both sides of your name tag so it doesn't keep flipping around and people are like trying to find out what your name is. And we do encourage you, the first person you talk to, if it can be someone you haven't talked to before, we encourage that. And just a seed question from last week, if you want to lead into conversation with a nice little light opener, is what do you think is holding you back from your dharmic path right now? Just good talk over lunch. And another thing is in the back, we do a food. People